Hello, everyone.
Happy Thursday.
Welcome to Into the Outer Realms. I'm Joey.
I'm Tanya.
And as always, it is Thursday night, and we are super excited.
Yes.
Last week, we had the opportunity to be guests on WASP Radio on KGRA, where we're heard on Tuesday nights overnight at 2 a.m. The show that you're going to see tonight is going to be rebroadcast then, and that's the way it's done every week. Mm-hmm. And we were doing another place where we're kind of syndicated, so to speak, is ERRT Radio, Ronald Toltovar. Mm-hmm. And Ronald had us as a guest on the show about a month ago. And we met a very interesting fellow investigator named Chris Harmon. Chris is a central player in the Western Association for the Science of the Paranormal, or WASP, out of Utah. And we hit it off. You guys know how we work as investigators, the integrity, the methods, the storytelling. Mm-hmm. And Chris is all that and more. So we're going to roll the opening. Welcome to our 50th episode.
Right.
Last week we were guests on Chris's show, and it was his 30th episode. So big doings. So we're going to roll the intro. We're going to come back, and we're going to get started. There exists a realm beyond our wildest dreams, a realm beyond reality that the gatekeepers and guardians have always told us consists of nothing but tricks of the eye, weather balloons, swamp gas, sand cranes, fairy tale myths of monsters, crackpot conspiracy theories, and desperate cries for attention.
We know this realm exists, and it's just beyond the horizon, the preset path, the well-worn walkways where the cynics want us to stay.
Instead, give this a listen. Put on your headphones, adjust your volume, close your eyes, and fasten your mental seatbelts, because the twilight-tinged turnoff from reality's alluring highway is looming just ahead.
We're about to leave the plane of the easily explained, the couldn't possibly be's, and the no way I just saw what I saw's, for the spaces and places where everything is possible, and if you stay long enough, even probable. We're about to take a journey into the outer realms.
All right. Let's see. We have some comments already. Let's get to those. Hi, Lori, hello.
Hi, Adam.
Adam, ahoy there, my pirate friend. Adam Bly, Captain, fellow pirate and actor. Let's get to it.
Yes.
Let's get to it, shall we? Chris was born in Ogden, Utah. He's a family man with 4 kids and a loving wife. And that says a lot when you lead with your wife and your kids in your bio. I love it. Chris is considered a jack of all trades. He has worked in retail and customer service for over 20 years and has 9 years of management. Chris has also worked in the wrestling business as a referee and ring announcer. Awesome. He has also learned how to video edit wrestling matches and post them on YouTube during that time. We'll have to ask those wrestling enthusiasts out there, and I am one of them. We'll have to ask them where we can see those. Chris enjoys the world of classic rock and new wave and collecting retro video games when not studying the paranormal. Chris has always been fascinated by the unknown and experienced it when he was 17 working at Lagoon, a Utah amusement park. And we're definitely going to be asking him about that. Chris has been studying the paranormal since 2009, trying to determine what caused this. Ironically, so have we.
That's right.
Say hello to a few more people before we bring Chris up. Ronald is here. Hi, Ronald. We were just talking about ERRT. And Chris and Austin are here from Three Beards Podcast, fellow brothers. So let's get Chris Harmon up here. Chris, welcome to the show.
Hi,
Thank you guys for having me. I'm glad to be here. Let's have some fun.
You. All right, let's do it. So
super excited. So Joey was talking earlier that we met you while we were a guest on Ronald's show. Ronald's here with us tonight, ERRT Radio.
Good to hear from you, buddy. Good to see you.
Yeah. So we just really hit it off. I remember when, you came on, we were talking, our way of doing things was so similar. we just knew we had to have you on the show, and we had so much fun on your show last week. So it's just really a pleasure to have you and to be able to compare stories.
Well, it's one of the nicest things about working in the paranormal is you find a lot of people that share the same feeling that we do. And what that is we all are working together to try to get the answers. It's not a competition. It's never been about competition for me. And the reasons why is we're all trying for the same thing. So why can't we work together? And I think that's the one thing that brings us together is that concept.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
So KGRA, EERT, Three Beards podcast, everybody is working together. We all know each other, show up for each other's podcasts to support each other, share them and all. So that good things are going to come from that. So there's Ronald saying hello. So in your bio, it kind of said when you were 17, you had this experience. Was that your earliest experience, or was there something prior to that?
So it is my earliest experience. So to give everybody a heads up of what Lagoon is, it's pretty much the state's amusement park. It's based in Farmington, Utah, which is about 10, 15 minutes away from the state capital of Salt Lake City, Utah. It's been moved from many different places from the Great Salt Lake to Farmington. It's actually one of the places. Here's a good thing about Lagoon. It used to be a concert place for big bands back in the 60s and 70s, like the Doors. Let's see, the Mamas and the Papas. You also had the Beach Boys that came out. A lot of great bands came to this location, which was awesome, which will bring up the energy that you possibly can get from anything. So the night the experience happened, this happened back in 2000. I was a games operator, and one of the areas that this place has is a place called Pioneer Village, which has a lot of the old pioneer experience from back when it was in the 1800s. A lot of these buildings actually were transported from Salt Lake City to Lagoon in this area. So it brings a lot of energy, which is really cool. The game I was operating that night was the shooting gallery, and it's a light gun game. You just take the item and shoot at it, and what it would do a movement. You had a piano player that was playing the piano, cans moving all over the place, snakes, different type of creatures. I can't remember all of them. It's no longer there, unfortunately. They tore it down and turned it into just different things that people buy and everything, just a gift shop. But the night I worked it, I was by myself, and about 20 minutes before, and I know Aaron very well. I used to work with him at GameStop, one of the places I used to get my customer service in my experience. But one of the about 20 minutes before we were closing the game, everything went off at once. For the first time I've ever seen that, everything was going off at once. I was a little freaked out by it. From there, I'm thinking, what the heck's making this happen? And as soon as everything stopped, the first thing that happened was I started hearing footsteps down this walkway that only employees can go through. First thought, as being skeptical, I'm like, okay, it's one of my employees. They're playing a practical joke on me because it's the only time I've ever done the game. So what I did was started walking over there, and I go, very funny, guys, you're very funny. As I'm walking up there, nobody's there. Go check outside the door, check around the game, and nobody's there. I'm by myself the entire time. Now I'm freaked because all this stuff happened. What happened? How did it happen? And as soon as the supervisor finally came over to come talk to me and shut down the game, I told him what happened. He's like, yeah, it's just probably some type of air compressor failure or anything. But here's the thing about that. Rick, who's one of our founding organizers as well, he's also our tech expert, knows for a fact the air compressors couldn't have done all that.
Right.
So we don't know what happened. It's always been a dream of ours to go back there and see what we can find. However, the owners of Lagoon are extremely skeptical of the paranormal, don't like it all, don't want the theme park to be known as a haunted attraction. But if you've lived in Utah long enough, there's things going on there. Can't explain it, but you got to go out there and check it out. That was kind of my first experience. And then right around there, right when I'm graduating high school, do you guys remember the show MTV's Fear?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I remember watching that, and at first I'm like, I can't do this. There's no way. I'm freaking out watching these guys through all the experiences. And then it dawns on me, yes, I can do this stuff, because it honestly really isn't scary if you're with a team. With your bunch of people, you're fine. If you're by yourself, that's where the fear comes into play. Mm-hmm. And ever since then, I'm like, okay, how do I get into this? What do I do to make things happen? And 2009 is when me and a friend of mine just started getting to know a little bit of what to do with the paranormal. We had actually ended up setting up our own group, which at the time we called 4 Ghost Hunters, or 4GH. And it didn't span very well, only lasted until about May or June of 2010. And we started it back in November of 2009. So just a lot of things happened. That's just how it goes.
Yeah,
It
it
is,
does.
yeah.
So interesting couple of things. Our son was manager at GameStop, so there's some commonality
Something else
there.
we have in common.
But to stay on topic, I grew up at the Jersey Shore, and we also had with the piano player and all those different things. And I remember a story of one night on the boardwalk, and everything was unplugged. It was off for the night, and that piano player started playing
By itself, yeah.
So
that would freak me out.
yeah, there's something about that setup there that draws some energy. So,
Yeah, and one of those things too that I bring up is when it comes to the paranormal is energy's everywhere. If you really think about it, think about what the United States has gone through since the late 1700s with the Revolutionary War to today. So much has happened that the energy sticks around. And I think that's one of the reasons why we have all these experiences that happen, that the experience or the energy that came from the past is starting to show up, whether it's residual, intelligent, it's showing up. It's making it happen.
Oh yeah,
Absolutely.
I say that all the time. The whole world is haunted. It's just, tuning in.
and it brings up a good point. On February 4th, we're going to have Nicole Strickland on the show. And I think later in the day, then we're going to be on her show. But Nicole is one of the world's leading investigators on the haunted Queen Mary, right? Supposedly one of the top places in the world. I'm reading the 3rd of her books now. But as she says, and we agree, and you're alluding to too, history and the paranormal go hand in glove.
Absolutely.
You can't talk about one without the other.
And it's funny you mentioned that, because last week or yesterday's episode of WASP Radio, we were talking about history, why it's important. History, you study your history and everything before you go into these haunted locations. If you guys haven't had a chance to check that out, I encourage you to listen to it. It's a great conversation. Now, granted, I don't consider myself an expert. And the reason why I don't consider myself an expert is, well, for one, you have to make money to do that. In an opinion, you have to make money to do that. And then something like this, we're doing this kind of on our own time. And the only way we're bringing in funds is the ghost tours, which we'll talk about a little bit later. But at the same time, when you've been studying this for the last 11, almost 12 years, you start learning about the little things that go on. And history is one of those things that's extremely important, because you can go into a place and understand the history of what's going on. And if you know exactly like where someone was shot, let's say, for instance, you go into a house, someone was shot, you're going to go to the spot where they were shot at to see if any energy resides from there.
Right.
Makes sense.
So we're always interested, and we talked last week with you about our stories. Now it's your turn, so to speak. That movement from being an experiencer to being an investigator. And you alluded to that. You started a team. But what was that process like? What was that moment? And what did you sort of base that initial experiment on? Like books you read or shows you had watched, or just intuitively?
It's the questions: who, what, where, when, how, and why. Ask those questions on any type of investigation field study that you're doing, because if you hear like a knock on the door, okay, how did that happen? Why did it happen? Who did it? You ask around, okay, were you guys near that door? And you ask all those questions. If you've gone through everything, you may have caught something, not 100% unless you've got the evidence to back it up. But it really just falls in line with those questions. That's when you start researching, doing your study. I couldn't remember a lot of the books that I read that kind of helped me in this. But it's just, to me, I'm more of a visual person. I will watch something and see how they do it, and then try to see if I can duplicate that as well, which will always help out with the inexperience that you guys have.
Right.
Absolutely. Cool. So when you formed WASP, the Western Association for Science of the Paranormal, we love that the word science is in your team's name.
Science, I think, is a very important part of it, because you're using equipment. is the major part of it. I mean, the standard equipment anybody that should be using if you're going to be an investigator is digital recorder, camera. Two are the biggest things. Also a flashlight. I highly encourage not a wind-up flashlight, though. There's a story behind that.
Cool.
But those are your three common things you always want. You want a flashlight, you want a digital recorder, and you want to take photography. So you want pictures. Now, granted, cell phones have majority of that stuff already. So you could use those. You could use those to take pictures. But the thing with the paranormal I've noticed, if you're using like digital versus like the old photo cameras, the old cameras that you had to put the film in, you're going to get a better, I think you're going to get a better result with the old-fashioned style than versus digital. I've learned that quite a bit, because the one thing about digital that I've learned that's kind of hurt it is with those cameras, they come up pixelated, and at one point you'll get dead pixels that could be mistaken for something else. And I've learned that from a lot of investigations we've done in the past. It's very important to realize that. So yes, you could use your cell phone to do it, but be prepared. You got to really look at those pictures and kind of point out what is part of the film and what is not. If that makes sense.
Right. No, it does.
Absolutely.
And I was just reading again in one of Nicole's books, digital cameras produce light artifacts that could be mistaken as orbs.
Right
so
there.
as investigators, we have enough. That's why I like the PSB-11 spirit box. Well, I want to talk to you about the spirit boxes that you use. You can turn off the radio function almost completely. It gets some of that chatter out there, and you're working mostly with the frequencies, which is nice. But then when you move to dowsing rods and you're getting yes, no answers based on the way the rods are calibrated for the spirit you're talking to, I feel like whatever we can do to take, don't use a digital camera because it creates light artifacts and affects pixelation, right? So, but anyway, so great. So a camera, digital recorder, flashlight, and then what else is in your bag?
So what we've got quite a bit of things. First off, of course, an EMF detector. We do got one of those. We recently last year purchased. We've got RIM pods. We've got more digital recorders. I'm trying to think of everything off the top of my head. Recently, we finally got a hold of an SLS camera, which for those of you who are not familiar with the SLS camera, it uses the Xbox Kinect to use to get stick figure lineups, which will show mainly the human portion of it. But if there's something there, it could actually pick up the spiritual form in a stick figure form. There's pros and cons behind that because it does help out with it, but if you're not calibrating it correctly, you can pick up false data. Like, for instance, when I started playing with this, with the SLS camera, I started it where I had it plugged into my PC, and I was having it pointed in this hallway of my house, and there's a towel sitting on the railing of my stairs. And what ended up happening is it was pulling up a stick figure inside the towel.
Yep.
And right off the bat, I already knew, okay, now hold on a minute. That's not paranormal. That's just, it imprinted something into the towel that thinks you think it is. But you got to also remind yourself, too, you got to be very skeptical of what you're picking up on those.
Right.
We had something similar when we first tried it out in our house. It was a fern. It was just enough in the frame of the camera. And we were like, okay, there's not a wee tiny, 4-inch ghost.
Yeah, little leprechaun hanging out in the fur. But I will say this though, Chris, and I think it's important. We had a different experience with the Kinects. It was an old chair, and a guy had brought it home, and there was an ancestor attached to it. So we went through a whole investigation. We identified her. And it was cool because when you pointed the heat gun at the chair where she was sitting, the temperature actually went up. But they sent us the next week, they put a Kinect on it, and they sent us the footage. And she was sitting next to the chair with her hand on the arm, and you saw the arm of the stick figure move and lay the hand over her hand.
Oh, yeah.
So that gives a lot of credence that if you eliminate, if we do our homework, and so much of what we do is debunking, it is a legitimate tool, no question.
And on top of that, I'll even give an instance where we used it and do have some incredible evidence to prove that it does actually work. And it was a case in Taylorsville, Utah that we were working in. This is actually one of our most difficult cases that we've ever had, because I feel a lot of the truth from the client was not leading to any important stuff that really could have helped. But one of the nights we were there, we were having a tarot card reading inside there. I had Sabrina and I had Stephanie both in there doing a tarot card reading together. We also had Amitaf, who's the one that created our SLS camera from us. And if you guys haven't had a chance to, I'm going to give a shout out to Amitaf. She is an extraordinary tech. I mean, this woman is amazing. Look her up, find information about her. She is a terrific person and also a terrific tech. I love her to death. I'm glad she's a part of WASP, helping us out big time. But she's at.
Uh-oh. Chris, we lost your audio.
Folks, stay with us while we work this out, but Chris's audio has cut out.
Oh, it says you're muted again.
Oh. Chris, try.
No.
Okay, guys, sorry. These kinds of things happen sometimes, so just stay with us, please, for a minute while Chris is working this out. It's just
maybe if he goes out and comes back in.
right. Okay, folks, we're going to try to drop Chris out. Stay with us, and we're going to try to bring him back in. Chris?
Can you hear us?
This has never happened before.
Yeah,
Right.
Lori says not.
As Lori
unusual.
said, not unusual. Oh, I think we got Chris back.
Well, we had you back.
We heard you there for just a second, Chris.
Test 1, 2. Test
There
1,
you
2.
are.
There
you are.
Well,
We got it fixed. Technical difficulties. Gotta love technology and the best of fun.
Yeah. And Lori said, not unusual for the subject we're talking about. So there you go.
But anyway, back to what we were talking about. So Sabrina is in the closet. Amitaf's got the SLS camera pointed at her, and she sees a stick figure right behind Sabrina. And it ends up going up into the attic where there is actually an opening to a crawl space up there. And as they're going back, she even hears Sabrina say, something's touching me, but does not say anything until afterwards and shows her the footage, which is simply remarkable that it even happened. But it was really cool because that right there shows the example of that the Kinect was actually working at the time.
right.
So
Right.
it really helps out.
Yeah, it really does.
So you're slowly adding things over time. You also have a considerable team, right? Typically, Tanya and I go in just the two of us, right? So how many people on your team?
We have a total of 15. We have a total of 15
Awesome.
people. We have 3 founders, myself, Justin, who's also the co-host of WASP Radio, who wasn't there last week, Rick, who is also our tech guy, one of our big tech guys. We have 2 lead researchers. We got Thomas and Andrew. Andrew is our historian. And then you got Sabrina, you got Stephanie, you got Crystal, you have got Casey, you got Robert, who is our social media director, Lori, Luke is another one, and Tony I know of for sure. And then I think we brought someone else in. I got to remember who she is because she hasn't talked much since we brought her on. But that's who we currently have. We don't bring everybody to the field study because one thing you got to remember, most importantly, is the space that you've got. If you've got too many people, you're not going to have a lot of activity happening.
Exactly. We've experienced that many times.
So we're pretty cautious on how many people we bring, but we have enough people just because things happen. People can't always make it out to this stuff. Then you have people that are there that can, and it works out, makes everything better.
It's great having so many people. I'm sure, it's really cool because you get all these different perspectives from different people who've had different life experience, people who can, look at things from, different angles. I love that.
And the good part with our team is there's a lot of diversity to what everybody can do. Psychic medium, Wiccan is a good example. That's what Stephanie brings in. We've got Crystal who does Reiki. Which actually kind of helps with the healing process of cleansing people, which is really nice.
Absolutely.
And that's the other thing too, is you want to make sure you have people that know how to cleanse.
Yeah.
And when we get talking about Fielding-Gar Ranch on Antelope Island, I've got a great story that really brings up why this is important, because the paranormal affects everybody.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
absolutely. So I want to get back to that wind-up flashlight, but I have maybe a tough question for you, but I'm going to ask it. So, Association for the Science of the Paranormal, and you said we're bringing in equipment, we're measuring energy. It's science. Where do you situate tarot, Reiki, psychic mediumship in that?
Very good question. That's a very good question. I feel they all have an importance, because tools are not just the electric equipment. Tools is what you bring in your body. Your body will always have a great sense of what's going on. The hair on the arms going up, feeling goosebumps, feeling cold spots. It's always important to have that. With Reiki, Wiccan, and having a psychic medium, it's extremely important because each area is going to be different. The nice thing about a psychic medium is she can go in and actually explain things that maybe even the owner of the home or the business didn't even know what was going on.
Right.
And I've had another person that was a psychic medium. At first, she was doing really well. Things didn't work out. So when I brought Stephanie in, you can tell a difference because of the professionalism that she brings in, and her skill is just amazing. I love her to death. I'm glad she's a part of the team. Sabrina, who is our Wiccan, does an excellent job too. She's the first one that we ever experienced using tarot card readings with. And it's amazing what that transpired. It also falls in line with our Antelope Island Fielding-Gar Ranch experience. And then Reiki, a great example of how Reiki helps out. That Taylorsville case, we decided to get the family away from the house. 2 people are in the house cleansing it. And then the rest of the family is at a park with us where Crystal's doing her Reiki session on them and trying to retrain their aura pretty much to come back to normal, try to block all the negativity that was going in. And her mother was the great example, because her mother came in on fire. She was upset. She was angry, very irritable. I know drinking was involved because I know she was drinking, and you can smell it on her breath. We did the Reiki session. 45 minutes later, it was a whole entire 360. She was nice, calm, happy, very mellow, even apologetic to her family. You can tell how important that was, just having Crystal there doing the Reiki session. I was amazed with how the family transformed. It was an amazing experience.
You guys are doing some innovative things. I love it. Tanya's a Reiki master teacher, of course, psychic medium. So she brings a lot of that stuff to it. What was it? Oh, so you get a phone call and someone needs you to come and investigate, right? Help them out, do something. Take us through what are the steps you do prior to actually landing on site with the team?
First thing I do is ask a lot of questions. Paranormal, not everything is paranormal. That's the first thing we got to point out, is not everything's paranormal. So you got to ask a lot of questions. You got to get down to the, when the stuff is happening, how's the weather? What's the weather like when all this is happening? What time of day is it happening? Anything coordinating with it, like electronics that are going through the house? And then you set up a time to do a further interview, and also check out the hot spots so that you know where you need to go to check all this stuff out to see what you're gathering, and how you can look at it as either something that could be debunked or something that might not be paranormal at all. One of my favorite questions I like to ask, and I'm even going to start adding on to this: have you picked up anything from a thrift store, a real estate sale, yard sale? Did you dig up anything on accident out of a park that you brought home? Because that stuff could add energy that may be negative, could be positive. You never know. You can ask about, we do ask one particular question about if you are using any type of medications, because that's also very important, because things could be messing with your head. Great example with that is we had a case out here in Layton, which is not that far from where I live. And this kid was having issues with a wooded area behind his house, kind of a hollows. And the night that we went out there, he came out with us, and he was just acting so bizarre, so strange. And it turns out he was smoking pot.
Oh, wow.
And you're like, oh, that's not good.
Not too
Granted,
good.
there was something out there that, because we were all normal, we don't do any type of drugs, don't drink, we don't smoke weed, because you got to focus on this. You don't want anything to elevate your caution of thinking something's out there, because you got to have an open mind for it at all times. But that's just some of the things you look at. Next thing is you got to study the history. So Andrew, my historian, who's also one of my lead researchers, will go ahead and he will look up as much information as possible based off of the address, because sometimes there are articles out there where there might be history behind it. A good example, and then we were talking about this on WASP Radio last night. One of our previous guests, his name is Martin Casals. He's one of my wrestling buddies from Ultra Championship Wrestling Zero here in Salt Lake City, who is also former WWE Tough Enough contestant back in 2011. And he was talking about his experiences in his home in Saratoga Springs. You come to find out, and he found this out after he got into the house, that the house that was there previously exploded, killing the homeowner's wife and a third-party Questar gas employee down in the basement. It was one of the scariest moments. It happened back in 2007, and then in 2008, they had the house all built, and he moved in, and they've had activity ever since. It's important to look up that information so you can see if there's any backstory to why that stuff is happening. So you look up the history, go there, check out the hot spots, see if you can notice anything. A house we did in Sunset, for instance, they kept on seeing this black mass by the stairway downstairs. I go downstairs with my EMF detector, and there is an old-fashioned carbon monoxide detector right at the stairs. You put the EMF right to it, boom, over 40 milligauss, pushing out a lot of electro energy that your mind's going to be playing tricks with you on that. So that's going to cause a lot of it. So that's one of the reasons why you do the whole entire scenario, the interview, walk the home, and then you go in and do your investigation. Check out the places where the hot spots are at. Do EVP sessions. Make sure cameras are up and running. Because another piece of equipment that we've got, we do have a security system with up to 4 cameras, which does help keep an eye on things. But the downside behind it is night vision, but you see a lot of dust flying around the air. And you got to specify if it's dust, bugs, dirt, or it could be orbs. You never know.
Right.
And then the most important thing, this is one that a lot of people, it kind of hits a wall with them, and that's reviewing evidence. Not a lot of people like reviewing evidence because you're sitting there anywhere from 2 to 8 hours a day, just looking at your screen, having headphones on, listening carefully with everything. And you listen for any type of abnormalities that happen and try to write it down. You have your other team members listen to it so that we have backups and everything. You try to debunk what you may have caught on camera and any other personal experiences. And then you sit down with the client, show them what they've got. This is also a very important key as a part of my customer service skills. You give them a copy of everything that you've got for them. All video, all audio, anything, any pictures you've got. You got to make sure you have that so that way they have it for their records so they know, hey, this is what we've captured, this is what we've got. That's pretty much the entire scenario for any home, any business, any landmark.
Awesome. Folks, you're listening. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I love your interview process. It's very thorough. I love that you ask about medication. Sometimes if there's some emotional situation going on within the family, like you were talking about the mother who came home and she was very upset, she had been drinking, you're absolutely right, those are factors that play in and can actually add to the activity. So it sounds like you guys are just extremely thorough. Awesome.
It's important to be very thorough too, because this is not something that you get a lot of skeptics out there that say, oh, this doesn't exist. What are you guys talking about? I'm an open-minded guy. I respect everybody's opinions and thoughts when it comes to the paranormal, whether you believe it or whether you're not. I understand. I respect it. I'm not going to judge you for any type of purpose. But that's why we're here, to get those answers so that way they understand, hey, this is what's going on. You have to be very thorough. You have to do that or you're not going to get anywhere whatsoever.
Exactly. Right. And I love, too, that you guys you're doing this really thorough job. You have all these, excellent perspectives, people from, again, different coming at it from different, areas. And then you're offering really solid solutions, which is something else that we try to do, like you were talking about cleansing the house with Reiki, working on the mother. I mean, a lot of times people go in and they're all about gathering the evidence, which is great. You want to do that, but then you're leaving them with some really solid solutions. So,
and Tanya, thank you very much for bringing that up. That is another thing that we do. I forgot to mention that. I apologize. Is afterwards, we talk to the family and see what they want to do next. Depending on how serious it is, cleansing is one of the most important things that you can do for the home, but you got to do it correctly. It's not just about sages. There's other things that you have to add to this in order to make sure that you're cleaning this house correctly. And if it gets really bad, you may have to have a connection for exorcism.
Yeah.
If it's needed, you got to have those right people at the right place, and you got to know exactly what is important for this case. You got to know, is it going to need an exorcism? Is it going to need a cleansing? Maybe there's something else that you need to throw in too. So there's many factors that happen even after the case is over with. And the other thing too, most importantly, unless the customer or the client says, you know what, we're good, we will never close a case until it's 100%.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. Multiple visits. Now, Chris, I know we're running in this. So this is the age of social media. It's the age of cable TV, streaming. There's so much information out there, and some of it is packaged for entertainment. Or how much, because it's wonderful for the audience to hear you, because a lot of what they see on television or the things that they're really bombarded with, you don't see them sitting for hours tediously going through. You often don't see them doing a thorough case history. It is a challenge. Can you talk about the challenge of going into a house where these people have been a steady diet of everything's a demon, everything's out to get me, all of the paranormal is evil? Have you encountered that, and what techniques do you use to kind of overcome that, get that calmed down so you can start at a clean base?
Well, the first thing we tell people when we do this interview, this is nothing like Ghost Adventures. This is nothing like Ghost Hunters. This is nothing like the Tennessee Wraith Chasers on TV. Because what you're doing is you're sitting there in the room for hours asking questions. You're talking to yourself, it feels like, most of the time. What you see on TV versus the reality of it is two different spectrums, because for one, it is an entertainment value. It's all about ratings. The reason why Ghost Adventures acts the way they do at each location they go to, it's about ratings. You're not getting ratings, you don't have a show, you get canceled.
Right.
That's the reason why Zach acts the way sometimes he does. Now, granted, a lot of the things they've done has caused health issues for them. But hey, to each their own. That's how they handle their business. That's how they do it. But you're sitting there, you're watching thoroughly everything. You are looking at every scenario possible. You're going back, reviewing the interview, talking about these situations. Where do we go from here? What is next? Some of these cases, they're not very long. They could be 3-4 hours, just depending on the person themselves. A lot of them's not overnight. I'm going to be honest with you. We've had one time we've been overnight at a place from dusk till dawn. Only one time. And that's the place that we'll talk about here in a minute, Feeling Guard Ranch. It just depends on the timing for the customer and the client, because for one, we don't have a lot of money, so we can't send them to a hotel room and sit there the entire time. We spend enough time there as much as we can. If we notice that the activity is continuing, we continue on. If there's nothing there, we hold off. We look at what we've got and plan another day if we need to come back. A lot of people don't realize that when you go out there and do this stuff, sometimes you're going to have a ton of activity that you're overwhelmed. You're like, wow, this place is active. It's amazing. Sometimes you're going to be sitting there bored as heck because nothing's going on. Right. And that's when you got to start looking at the reality. Is there actually stuff going on here? But at the same time, I use this phrase all the time on the radio show. I use this phrase at our ghost tours. The paranormal works on its own time. It doesn't work clockwork to when we are there. It just happens when it wants to. We don't have any control over that. It's not like we can throw out something to make it happen. People think it does, but that's just not how it works.
Right.
Exactly.
And further, it's sentient.
Mhm.
It is not passive. It is not it is as smart as we are, and maybe smarter in a lot of cases. So before we go, you've kind of teased the ranch, and we want to kind of spend most of the rest of the episode on that. Wind up flashlight. Tell that story real quick.
So the wind-up flashlight, back in 2009 when we got started, the only flashlight I had was a wind-up one. And one of the reasons why these flashlights are the worst thing you can do, it ruins audio evidence for EVPs because you're hearing the wind-up. And if you go back to our early EVP sessions, you're hearing the wind-up flashlight and it ruins everything. It's awful. That's why you use a battery-powered flashlight. Don't use the shake-up ones either. No. Those are not any better. They're much worse. I say right now, stay away from those. Use the battery power ones. There's a reason why you stay away from them. And I've always been given crap by my team about that stupid flashlight. And I still have it, but it's locked away somewhere. We don't use it anymore.
Gotcha. It's a museum piece
Funny.
now. So I lied about getting to the ranch. Just real quick. Spirit boxes, your thoughts on them, and what do you use?
In my opinion, they're a very useful tool if you know how to use them correctly. Justin, my other founder, has the SB, I think it's the SB7 that we use.
Mhm.
And he knows how to use it really well to make it where it answers the questions that we are needing to answer when the stuff is there. Me personally, I have a hard time with them because you got so much stuff that's going through it's going through the FM or the AM lineup. It's going through so much you can't sometimes dispel what the spirit's saying if there's something there.
Right.
And I have no problem with them. It's a very unique tool. It's one of those things we've always wanted when we got back into this in 2017. It's one of those things, though, that I still have skepticism behind if it actually has working components to it. But, like anything else, any of these items, there's one thing you got to remember, unless it's a digital recorder, unless it's an actual camera, a lot of it's for entertainment purposes only.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Especially cell phone apps. That's the one that a lot of people think, because it says it's happening. Hold on a second, take a step back. Because cell phones have the opportunity to make that stuff happen if you know how to program it correctly.
Right.
Like on our radio show, Wasp Radio, we were talking a little bit about the necrophonic,
Yep.
if you recall.
Good do.
Mhm.
That necrophonic, I started skeptical at the beginning. As I worked through, I can tell you that the more and more I use it, the more I feel there is a lot going on with it that can make it a useful tool. Not everybody's going to agree with it, and that's fine. I mean, that's why we're all working together. Everybody has their own different thoughts and opinions about it. Cool. I appreciate it. That's what I want to hear. But I think the necrophonic is actually a really cool device. And like I said, we're going to talk about it here when we talk about Antelope Island. We used it one day on Antelope Island, and we got some of the most amazing responses. I'm like, that's pretty cool. I'm not going to lie. Just not coincidence. It's just, that's pretty cool.
Right. Okay. So now, no more
Yeah.
teasing. So
Yeah.
when people think of a ranch in Utah, they go to Sherman Ranch or Skinwalker Ranch, right? It's
Mhm.
everywhere. It's big between Bigelow and now Brandon Fugel and the show on history and all. But there is another ranch, a ranch that is occupying a lot of your time, and you have some great stories about. Take us wherever you want to take in as much detail about the ranch.
Okay, so we're referring to Fielding-Gar Ranch on Antelope Island, which is in the middle of the Great Salt Lake. This island has been inhabited before by Native Americans, maybe settlers before, but it really started in 1848 when part of the LDS Church settled there by a gentleman by the name of Fielding-Gar and 7 of his 8 kids. He was a widower. His wife passed away back in Illinois and everything, but he settled land there and passed away in 1855. Now, part of the ranch, there's quite a bit there. You've got the barn, you've got the stables, you've got a spring house, which used a spring water to kind of cool items and everything, which was really nice. You've got a bird refugee area, which is that's a dark spot, we've learned. But the most active area in this whole entire ranch is the ranch house itself. It's been built into 3 different parts through time. It started with this family room and living room. and then the dining room, and then they added the kitchen, and then a wash area for the ranch hands. We've been there. We've started studying this back in July of 2018. And one thing I can say about this place is the activity never stays the same. It always changes, which makes me feel we might have a portal on site on this place because it always seems to change with a few different items added to it, such as there's a ranch hand that is a angry old man that walks around the place and will throw items in front of people we've heard about, never caught it yet. But that place has had some of the most extraordinary evidence that we've ever caught, that we've been impressed, and we keep going there because the more we go there, the more that happens. Like that first night we were there, we got an incredible Class A EVP, and it was from Ricky, my other founder, with two members who are no longer with us, Jason and Chance. They were in this little bunkhouse that's right next to the barn. And he turns on a digital recorder, sets it on a chair, and within 5 seconds, you hear a clear female voice say, sit on the chair or sit beneath the chair. It was so clear as day. It's amazing. We thought it was saying sit beneath the chair for the longest time, and I had to do a little research. And if the rumors are true about it, apparently back in the 1800s, if a kid was bad, they sat underneath the chair, still trying to figure out where that falls into play. But that's what one of the clearest EVPs we had. It was simply amazing. We've had incidents where there's restrooms that they set up there for everybody that comes to visit this ranch because it is a historical site. And there have been people that have experienced stuff in the bathrooms, like hearing 3 knocks when they're using the restroom. And I know it happened in one of our ghost tours that we did back in 2018. So me and Justin went and checked it out. We couldn't duplicate the situation that happened, which was quite remarkable, but at the same time, it was a little windy. There's a tree that's right next to it. Branches hitting the top could have a lot to do with it. That's like one of the first ones we were able to debunk. And then 2019 is where really a lot of the stuff that's been happening to the team started then. And it began July 6, 2019, when we brought in a lot of the team members we currently have now, Sabrina, Casey, Andrew, and Crystal. One of the things we were able to debunk is Crystal and Sabrina thought they were seeing something above the barn. So the way the barn is set up, it actually has like 3 windows on top that you can see everything on the other side from. And they thought they were seeing a figure walking by up on the beams, which is incredible because we brought another paranormal group in 2020 over there to see it. And they were seeing something crawling up inside of the barn, crawling up into that same area. We were later able to debunk it as the trees on the other side that you can see, because the way we're moving, you can actually pinpoint how a human can look like they were walking. But we had another interesting EVP, and this came from Sabrina, Casey, and Justin. They were walking from the cars back to the ranch house, and they had a digital recorder going, and then there's a silo that's right next to the barn that has bats in it, and you can hear the bats moving, chirping and everything. And you hear Justin say, oh, there's bats in the silo. And then you hear this girl's voice say, can somebody help me? It's not Class A, but you can hear it faintly. And then afterwards you hear Sabrina, I just thought I heard somebody. And we caught up on there. It's an amazing one, because when we heard back the evidence, we're like, what? That's so crazy. It's amazing. That same night, Sabrina got shoved, I think she got pushed a little bit. Justin had something rush at him. And then Casey, which was our youngest member at the time, got a scratch on his chest, what looked like to be the number 8.
Ooh.
Oh, wow.
It was there for a second and disappeared. And we were trying to figure out where that came from. We do know that Fieldingar had 8 kids, but not all 8 kids were with him. There was only 7. That was one of the more interesting incidents.
Yeah.
But also that same night we were going in, the cabinet doors were opening on their own in the kitchen, which only happened that night we were there. Any other time, it didn't happen. We don't know why. It was quite interesting. We were trying to get footage of it, but every time it was just like we missed it at the worst time. Plus, this is at the time, we didn't have a security camera system yet. So we're using night vision cameras that we've got that $50, you get what you pay for. Another example of dead pixels kind of coming in through the frame to kind of mess things up. we had all that stuff going on. And that's some of the stuff I remember that was amazing from that night. But I think our most memorable night in 2009 was our only overnight stay there, which was on Labor Day weekend. Actually, that's Sunday into Monday. And this is the reason why I say everything happens differently in this place, because for the first time, we started heading over by the stable area. There's actually a picnic area off to the west of it that you can go through a gate, and there's like picnic tables, trees, and stuff. And they were I know Sabrina and Crystal were picking up a male figure talking to them, because they can sense it and feel it, and you can tell that the moods was different. When we were standing there, I was trying to communicate with the guy, but I got a little aggressive. You don't want to do that. And it cost me, because I did get attacked. I had a marking on my back, which didn't scare me very much. I didn't run off or anything. We continued on. But at the same time, provoking, you get that. That's one thing a lot of people need to realize. Another reason why they probably get the activity they do on TV, provoking. And there's a cause and effect when you provoke. You provoke, there's a good chance you're going to get attacked. You don't want to do that.
Exactly.
But the best part of the night was around 2:00 in the morning. It was Sabrina and myself, and then we brought in Casey later, and it was the middle of a tarot card reading session inside the ranch house. At the time, this is the busiest hotspot that we had. And what happened was she was pulling the cards, and she got a story about one of the families that stayed there, which was the Stringham family. This is after Fielding-Gar passed away. Not exactly sure the time frame, but he also married, because you got to also remember too, with Utah, polygamy. They had multiple wives, and one of Brother Stringham's wives happened to be Fielding-Gar's daughter that was living there. And it involved around her. Apparently, there was a ranch hand that was doing something with the children, not exactly sure what. Stringham got on his case about it and banned him from the ranch. After the tarot card reading was gone, we started noticing some movement in the bedroom that was off to the north or the southwest of us, came out, and then all of a sudden we hear a chuckle out loud, a laugh.
Wow.
And it freaked me out, because that's the first time it's happened to me. I'm going to be honest. That's the first time it's happened. My hair was up. I had goosebumps. I was like, holy cow.
Wow.
And I'm happy to report we did catch it on EVP. Barely. You can barely hear it, but it's on there. And I was like, yes.
That's awesome.
That was one of my favorite things to happen. I do know later that night, we had something running around outside when we were all in doing an EVP session in that same room. And we come outside, and an incident where something started rushing at us, and you could see it in the grass. My first thought is, okay, because there is wildlife. You got deer, you got bison, you got coyotes. Wouldn't be surprised if you have wolves out there, antelope, etc. You couldn't see any animal prints. You couldn't see anything out there. And of course, this is at 3-4 o'clock in the morning when this is all happening. It was incredible. I know we've got video evidence, and I'm trying to find that so we can post it. But I did get a little like, what the beep is going on? You can hear it in my voice.
Yeah.
That's just stuff that happened in 2018 and 2019.
Wow. So how far back? When did you start your investigations there?
Back there in 2018.
2018.
Yep. And go ahead.
No, I was just gonna. How many hours you think you have in there so far?
On average, I would say I'd rate right around 50 hours to it.
Wow. Awesome.
Yeah, it's amazing. And we're still going to look into more of this, because recently we've noticed the activity in the woods has gotten worse. It's gotten a lot darker and really scary. And the best example I can give, this happened in August of 2020. And this is an example of why you want people that know how to cleanse. This is the most important part behind it. What happened was, this case in Taylorsville that we were talking about kind of connects in with it, because the second time we went over to Taylorsville, this case in Taylorsville, we all felt like something came home with us. Even after doing saging at the end of the night, something still came home with us. Mine didn't affect me until we went to the ranch later in August. And one of the things about when you go into a case, you have to have a game plan. You have to have everything set up. You have to have a map of knowing who's going where, who's doing what, etc. This night, I went gun ho. I didn't do any of that, which is out of my norm, which kind of threw everybody off, which was quite interesting. And then we were trying to do a little gathering up meeting, and Justin was saying something. I'm not exactly sure what. I snap at him, not once, but twice. I don't snap. That doesn't happen very often. So it was me, Stephanie, Amitav, and then we brought a friend of ours named Chris Lehman. She's from Life After Life Paranormal. She came in with us, and we went into the ranch house. Originally, I was planning to do an experiment involving music. I wanted to see what, if I played a certain tune, what would happen. And I'm not going with anything new age. I'm going back to the 1800s. I'm going back to 1700s because the stuff that they listened to. Even LDS hymns as a great example. We were going to do that. It never happened because I was so out of focus. I was not even really focused on what they were doing. What I can tell you was they were using the SLS camera, and they were noticing when Stephanie would sit in this bench that's in the living room, her stick figure wouldn't pop up, but when she stands up, it would. And then you got away and you saw two figures on the bench, maybe children. But what happened was 15 minutes after going in there, I excused myself and I told Justin, I go back to base camp. I'm like, something's not right with me. Something's not feeling well. They started taking the Melmeter, which is another tool that we've got. And this is actually my favorite tool because it does measure temperature. It does measure electricity in the air. I remember walking around with it, and in between the spring house and a bunkhouse that is right next to the ranch house, I hit 40 milligauss, which in that area, there's not any electricity. That's impossible for it to hit.
Wow.
Right.
But when they were putting it around me, this is one of the reasons why the Melmeter is important, is it can actually sense if there's anything attached to you. And sure enough, anything over 2 milligauss, that's when you notice it. It was hitting 5-6 milligauss on me.
Wow.
I didn't have my cell phone on me. I didn't have anything that would push that out. So they had to do an immediate cleansing. They did sage. They gave me holy water. They were just trying to chill me out, try to ground me. And I felt better, but drained. I hardly could do anything the rest of the night because I was so drained. And at that moment, we had a lot of things happen around base camp. We were having a lot of activity. Whatever came with me affected the ranch because they wouldn't allow us to go in. They were like, no, you can't come in. They were not happy.
Wow.
Something really got them messed up. And one of the reasons why we know that they were serious about it, Justin went to go unhook one of the security cameras and got vertigo right when he did it. And he hardly gets vertigo. He ended up actually being out the rest of the night too. So 2 of your lead researchers, founders, got knocked out of this case. It was very freaky.
Yeah.
It was crazy. And it brings up a very good point that you always bring protection. Always make sure you have some type of protection on you. I've got a necklace that I wear that has a quartz stone on it that helps protect me. I got stones that are in a little pouch that comes with me every time I go on field study. Because the last thing you want is to bring something home with you. I'm surprised it didn't do anything in my house. I'm quite surprised nothing happened in my house. But when we went there, when it had activity, that's when it started doing its own thing. And whatever happened after that point, we noticed that the woods were getting a lot darker.
Yeah.
A lot darker because we had a ghost tour after this incident, September 26, 2020. And we had a total of 30 to 40 people show up. Practiced really good social distancing. Everybody was wearing a mask. Everybody did an excellent job. I will say all the ghost tours we did in 2019 did really well. But the ones I'm happy about is the ones in 2020 because we did 6-7 ghost tours from June all the way to October, and not one case of COVID, not one positive case.
Awesome.
Very happy about that. The
Yeah.
good part about one good part about that area is nobody's out there, so it's hard for COVID to really be out there unless it sticks around. But that night we had people in the woods, including some friends of ours from Beyond the Grave Paranormal, Sam and Stefan. And Sam felt some burning on his back. and they looked, and there was 2 separate markings on his back on both shoulder blades. And then I come to find out there was a young lady that was in there, had the exact same thing happen to her.
Wow.
The next ghost tour, we had to block that off, making sure no one went in, because we don't want to put anybody in danger. This is supposed to be for entertainment, have a good time, see if you can have experiences. And it actually opened up my theory a little bit more about this bigger the space, because we've had up to 200 people show up to these ghost tours, and next thing you know, everybody's experiencing activity.
Yep.
It was the most crazy thing. I still remember doing a little tour over by that area, and I heard a little girl's voice, and someone else did. We never caught it on film. We didn't capture it on EVP, but we heard it. That was the craziest thing. And that same night, we had one of the craziest moments. We were talking about this earlier. So what happened was, as soon as our psychic medium, Stephanie, showed up, she showed up late that night, we started smelling smoke in the bar. And we're looking at everything above us, the lights, the electronics. And it's over by this old sheep shearing area that it was the strongest, but we couldn't see it. We couldn't see any flames. They ended up calling out the fire department to come take a look at this, and they couldn't find anything, nothing whatsoever. It was the craziest thing. It was like they were trying to get everybody out of there because they were not happy people were there.
Right. Wow. And it's so similar. We were talking about this prior to the show. Tanya and I were watching a documentary on Skinwalker Ranch, right? Not far. You said about an hour and a half, right? Same
That's
kind
right.
of thing. Phenomena do not repeat. Dr. John Alexander, who was ex-Army intelligence and wound up working for NIDS, right, Bigelow's organization, for Discovery Science there, he coined the term precognitive sentient intelligence. Sounds like there on that island, there's a little bit of that precognitive sentient intelligence. It can also almost anticipate what you're doing as investigators and adjust itself.
And it also helps too, if you've been there enough times, the spirits know you.
Yes.
They get to know you. They understand you. They understand your clicks and everything, that they're going to go ahead and do whatever they can to not show themselves as much, because, oh, it's the same guys. They've been here before. Let's leave them alone.
Right.
But yeah, exactly. I agree. It is that sense that they have, and you don't know exactly where it comes from or why they have it, but it does happen. Yeah. And another crazy thing that happened, because we talked a little bit about the necrophonic. And my thoughts and my opinions about it. So we decided to do a necrophonic session over in the stables where this old pickup truck is at. And what I remember from this situation was it brought up a name of one of our patrons that came to the ghost tour. And we brought her over. We don't know what it was about. I remember asking the question about, is there any burials? Because there's unmarked burials that are out on Antelope Island. We don't know where they're at. They don't know where they're at, and they've been trying to locate them. I asked about it, and it's like almost a hitman mob type experience. He's like, don't worry about it.
Wow.
It came out, don't worry about it. I'm like, are you serious?
Wow.
It was crazy. Even Rick, who's our biggest skeptic of the group, heard this, and he's like, now that's crazy. Yeah. That's a good way to put a skeptic like, whoa. So the necrophonic has some points of value and it works. And later that night, me, Thomas, and our youngest member, Robert, went into the spring house. This place we don't explore very much because one of the things that this ranch has, a lot of mice. A lot of mice in it. It's in this spring house area, which the spring no longer exists. The water's practically gone. But we're in there and we're asking about Brigham Young, who is one of the apostles of the LDS Church. And you hear someone say, he lied.
Wow.
Wow.
I'm like, oh boy, that's not good. But it also brought up something, he's coming. Kept on saying he's coming. And why that's important is one of our participants in the ghost tour got freaked out by something and started running around yelling, he's coming.
Oh.
Wow.
Beforehand. And I'm like, what is going on?
Right.
So I can tell you right now that Fielding-Gar Ranch, there's more to the story than meets the eye. We do know something dark happened between 1890 and 1920, but we're not allowed to know what it is.
Wow.
Wow. So I'm really curious too. This place sounds just amazing, and I can't wait till we can get out there. But you talk about it being on Antelope Island. So to get to the island, Chris, is it a causeway? Is it a bridge? Do you have to take a ferry over?
It's a causeway. It
Okay.
actually, there's a city right next to us called Syracuse that actually borders into Antelope Island. And you just take that causeway out. It's about 15 to 20 minutes from the beginning of the causeway onto the east side of the island where you
Wow.
run into this Fielding-Gar Ranch. And we did check out another place back in 2019 called, where was it? Prairie Homestead. It's actually about 4 miles away from where Fielding-Gar Ranch is on the northwest side. And we checked this place out, and we were picking up some interesting things. Another tool that we learned to use that we've discontinued because we've realized it's not worth it. It's called a PX. It's a very similar item to kind of like the Ovulus, except it doesn't show the words. It only spits it out in a robotic voice. A friend of ours, Chris Black, let us borrow this because he's one of my friends from the earlier days of when we were investigating. And it actually spit out the words, "I am George." When I asked George, "Are you here with us?" It said, "I am George," in a robotic voice. It was the craziest thing. Moments later, I start hearing things up on the hill because we're down in this little cavern area where used to have the spring house, a barn, and everything, and a silo. And I start hearing things up on the hill. So I start going up, turn on a digital recorder, and I get this really gruff, negative entity voice that I cannot even explain what it sounds like. It's crazy.
Wow. So obviously lots of ghosts and spirits. How about poltergeist activity, UFOs, non-human entities, either animal or humanoid? Does it kind of have the whole sort of package there, or?
UFO, I'm going to say there is something that happened there back in 2019. How I can explain it was I'm driving west home, and over above Antelope Island, I see a light segment. It points, one light turns on, another one turns on, another one turns on, another one turns on, a set of 4 lights.
Wow.
And I remember talking to Race over at KGRA because when he was here in Utah before he went back to Arkansas, I showed him this video, and he looks over at Warren and goes, "This is something that's similar that happened in Texas." And I even asked the ranch manager, Carl, one of the greatest guys, and I really appreciate him. He's one of the reasons why WASP got where we are today, for allowing us to be on the ranch doing what we do. But even I asked him about it because I know the ranch or Antelope Island so well because we've been there so many times. There's no way that pattern could happen because there's hardly any power out there. It's probably in a couple of buildings somewhere. But I asked him about it. He's like, "Yeah, that's nearly impossible for that to happen."
Right.
Otherwise, that's about spiritual wise. That's about it. Poltergeist wise, hit and miss. It kind of falls in line with the cabinet doors opening in the kitchen, where it opened on their own and everything. And it's interesting because I just thought of another experience that happened last year, and this happened during the daytime when I took my family out to Fielding-Gar Ranch. We had lunch, ate just a few moments before, and then we started walking around. I have a 5-year-old little girl that walked in with us into this bunkhouse, which is right in between the spring house and the ranch house. This is where they bunked up to 10 ranchers at one point. And she starts complaining her tummy hurts as soon as she walks out. This bunkhouse we've had some interesting things where you just feel really exhausted all of a sudden. It's like something's draining you in that particular spot. And as I pull her out, we start driving away from there, and 2 miles out, she's like, "My tummy feels better." My first thought is she just had chicken nuggets. Her stomach's probably not settled from the chicken nuggets, that her tummy's hurting a little bit. It just settled. That's the first thing I thought of. But you got to realize, too, any little child can sense this stuff and see this thing happen on multiple occasions. I wouldn't be surprised if something happened to her, to tell you the truth.
Yeah. Right. So we are this hour plus went so
we gotta
fast.
have you back to talk more about this.
Please.
We could probably talk a whole nother hour or so.
Yeah, just on the island.
Yeah.
how can people contact Wasp Paranormal, listen to your radio show every week, and sign up or get information about your ghost tours?
So how it works is we do have our website, waspparanormal.com, and there's 2 P's in the middle. So it'll be WASP, and then paranormal, obviously. And that's where you can contact us. We've got a little thing where you can put your name, phone number, email, and the message you want to send to us. You can also get a hold of us, admin@waspparanormal.com. That will get to me and my other 2 co-founders to the group. Shout out to them for all they do. I really appreciate it. We are on Facebook. Go to WASP 801. Just type in WASP 801. It will bring up our page, Western Association for the Science of the Paranormal. And then our radio show is on KGRA every Wednesday, 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And you can also listen to the archives on Spotify, iTunes, iHeartRadio, and Spreaker. So make sure you check those out. We've got some really good stuff. I talk about the ranch quite a bit. We have like 3 or 4 episodes about the ranch. Always bring it up in the show because there's so much activity that's happened there. A lot of the experiences that we're dealing with now kind of fall in line because we've dealt with it before. So that's the best way to get a hold of us. But make sure you listen to us every Wednesday. We are live at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
Cool. Chris, thank you to
so
our
much.
audience, guys. There are people out there who are so smart. They're doing the work in the right way. We're very grateful that they lend their time. They're busy people. And Chris, thank you. Total gratitude.
Thank you for having me on, guys. It's been a pleasure. You guys are always welcome back on Wasp Radio as well, too. And hopefully here, 2021, COVID goes away, and we can get you and Bill, the producer from KGRA, out here so we can take you guys to this ranch, and so you guys can experience it yourself. I think I could consider the Antelope Islands Fielding Guard Ranch one of the quietest hotspots you're ever going to find.
Oh, that sounds great. We're gonna take you up on that.
I love it.
All right, peace. Lori says, great show. Thanks, Chris. Thank you. Have a great night, sir. We're going to let you go.
Take care. You guys have fun, and I'll see you guys on the flip side.
All right, thanks, sir. All right, guys, thank you so much. Just want to let you know, next week we're doing a show on anecdotal evidence, analyzing anecdotal evidence. Such a big part of what we do. And then the next week we debut RTC. We got the group coming on, our group of investigators, some on camera, some are off, but working with us. Chris says, thank you. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you, Chris.
But we're looking at Denver International Airport, and we're looking at the Georgia Guidestones, seeing what is going on, parsing out fact from fiction. What are the lingering questions? What's been debunked? What's innocuous? What is sinister? So we're really looking forward to that in 2 weeks. And then we have, 3 guests every month for the next 3 or 4 months. Super excited. So everyone have a great night. Thanks for staying with us with a little bit of the technical difficulties. Everybody be well, and we'll talk to you soon.
Talk to you next week.
And join us because you never know what will happen when you go into the outer realms. Bye-bye. Thanks for being with us.